Hey guys, and welcome back into the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Chicago Cubs. Um, Basically, the question of all the struggles they've had going on this season, particularly on the road. Who's to blame? Is it Joe Maddon? Is it Theo Epstein? Is it the players? Is it some combination of all three? Um, Obviously, anyone that's a big Cub fan or anyone that really just follows baseball in general understands the fact that the Cubs get a lot of publicity. There's always a lot of talk about the Cubs, particularly in the last few years with their resurgence as a franchise and things of that nature. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people have been calling for Joe Maddon's job. Really, you can hear it from anywhere. Commentators will mention it, radio hosts, you hear it on the post games. It's all over the place. And the question I want to talk about in this video is Joe Maddon to blame? Not only for this season's failures and this season's struggles, but last year. And I'll start out by saying that I love Joe Maddon. The fact of the matter is he's done some great things in his time here. Statistically, numbers-wise, he's the greatest manager in Chicago Cubs history, and it's not particularly close. This team's never missed the playoffs ever since he's been here. He changed the culture, or helped change the culture of this organization, and made this organization become one where, a season where they're 10 games over 500 in the middle of August is a disappointment. And to most Cub fans, that would have been something that would have been impossible to imagine years ago. So I almost feel like in some ways we've all become a little spoiled. But I will say that this team has a 200 and damn near $20 million budget. It's one of the highest in the league, and they're not getting what they pay for, really. And they're a good team. They're a team that's on the cusp of making the playoffs. They're right in the thick of things. But the fact of the matter is this team is not a juggernaut like it was in 2016, and it should be. And it's just not. And you've seen it on the road, how much they've struggled. But the question here, is it Joe Maddon's fault? And I'm here to tell you, I do not believe it is. You hear all the time in sports, after a while you need a different voice. Guys get tired of hearing the same thing. They tune them out. Whether or not that's what's happening, I can't necessarily say. But what I can say is when I look at the contracts that have been handed out to different guys, such as Tyler Chatwood, such as Yu Darvish, Joe Maddon has had to work with a lot of, it's a weird situation because especially when you look at the guys on the team's individual numbers, a lot of guys, at least offensively, are having really good seasons. Chris Bryant's having a good season. Javi Baez is having another good season. Anthony Rizzo, his power numbers are a little down, but he's having a good season. Jason Hayward's having his best season as a Cub by a mile. There's been some good things, but they just can't piece it together, particularly on the road. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of holes within this organization. They don't have a lefty specialist out of the bullpen. That's clear. Brandon Morrow, that hasn't worked out. Another bad contract handed out. Kimbrel, he hasn't been here very long. Plenty of time for him to, earn and deserve that contract. But so far he hasn't been great. Now he's hurt. Cishek's been pretty good, but not as good as last year. He's been used so many times that at some point I think it's taken a toll on him. A little fatigue, I think. A little fatigue is set in, and now he's on the DL. Kinsler's had a bounce-back season, but there's just not a lot of reliability within the bullpen. And the offense is very hit and miss, just as it was last season. And the fact of the matter is, last season, Theo Epstein said it himself. The offense broke. What did he do this season to address that? He signed Daniel Descalso, another terrible contract that has not worked. They had to basically fake an injury at this point to get him out of the lineup. He signed for 2 years, $5 million. What do you do with him? It's just... The fact of the matter is, when I look at this team, you have no leadoff man. Haven't addressed that need since Dexter Fowler. But they have no leadoff man. They have no left-handed specialist. They have, multiple guys that just don't hit, can't hit. Well, I shouldn't say can't hit, but they don't hit. Albert Almora does not hit. He will not take walks. His OBP is below 300. That doesn't get it done. And the fact of the matter is, you got a lot of guys that are very similar. I love Kyle Schwarber. He's probably my favorite Cub. The guy can't get out. He can't hit for an average. 230. That's his career average. Ian Happ, strikeout specialist. Javi Baez, I love him. Don't want to say anything bad about him, but the guy doesn't take any walks. So luckily he's hitting 280, 285 or whatever it is. So his OBP is high enough at, 330. But what happens on that season when he hits 260? Now he's going to have an OBP of 300 because he will not take walks. I just feel like there's a lot of things going against Joe Maddon. And I feel like the real person to blame, if you want to blame somebody, is Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer. That's where the issues have came. Since 2016, they haven't done much of anything right. Steve Cishek was a great signing. But outside of that, what have they done right? Everything has backfired. Everything has blew up in their face. Again, they brought us something that none of us could have ever imagined, something that we all wanted to see, and we got to see it. And in large part, it was because of them and their vision and their plan and their decision-making. But again, since 2016, that decision-making has been less than stellar. And at some point, they have to be held accountable. And I just feel like, whether the players are tuning out Joe Maddon or not, there's so much blame put on him. And I just feel like it's a little bit ridiculous. I will go back to the World Series in 2016. I didn't like some of the decisions he made. I tended to get kind of like a vibe from him where he was, he wanted to prove he was the smartest man in the room. And I think he is a really smart guy. But I did get that vibe. So I'm not saying I've never disagreed or been upset with Joe Maddon. But the fact that this, last year and a half has been put squarely on his shoulders, I think is stupid. I think that, he's the same goofy manager that does these goofy little things. He's the same guy as he was before. A lot of the players are the same. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of holes on this roster. And the roster was pieced together by Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer. It was not pieced together by Joe Maddon. Ultimately, I do think Joe Maddon will be fired by the end of the season, barring a World Series championship, which at this point does not seem likely. Obviously, being baseball, you never know. It could happen. It's possible. They have the talent. Many of these guys have already proven they can win. But I just don't really – I'm not expecting it to happen. But yeah, I think it's shitty and sucks for Joe Maddon because I think this is a guy who's done everything he could for this city and for this team. I think he's a great guy. I think his players love him. But I do think he's going to be fired at the end of the season. And I don't think he's deserving of it. I think he's one of the best managers, and I think if they do fire him, wherever he goes, the team that he goes to is going to have a lot of success with him. And, if the Cubs, I've heard some rumors that if he is fired, maybe David Ross could come in. That would really excite me. Obviously, no experience as a manager, but I think he'd be great at it. But you've heard some Joe Girardi rumblings and things of that nature. If they got one of them, I'd be okay with it. But I would not be surprised if a few years from now we regret letting Joe Maddon go. But yeah, so to recap, the contracts that Jed and Theo have handed out have been just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, and the list goes on and on. Brandon Morrow, Yu Darvish, Tyler Chatwood, Daniel Descalso. I mean, none of these moves have worked out. None of them. And obviously they can't fire themselves, but the fact of the matter is to put all the blame on Joe, I think is ridiculous. He's getting scapegoated, and I think he deserves better from everybody. So Joe Maddon is not the reason the Cubs are struggling. He is not the reason the Cubs are not the juggernaut they were a few years ago. And I'm pulling for him. I'm pulling for them. And let's hope they can get a win tonight against Pittsburgh. I'll be back after the game tonight with a review. The reviews are going to be flowing on this channel from now on. A lot of Cubs talk, lots of sports talk. I'm not going to say it's going to 100%, be a sports channel. But I think sports will be the main thing discussed in this channel. Just excited to get it going, excited to be back, and thanks for checking in, guys. Like I said, be back with a review of the game tonight in Pittsburgh. Thanks, guys. I'm out.